Cahokia, the Mississippian city of 20,000 that vanished before Columbus. What if the largest city in North America, bigger than London in 1100 AD, simply ceased to exist, 2 centuries before Columbus ever set sail, and almost nobody today knows its name? That city was Cahokia. It sat in the American Bottom, the wide, fertile floodplain just east of the Mississippi River, directly across from where St. Louis stands today. At its peak around 1100 AD, it held roughly 20,000 people. London in 1100 AD had roughly 15,000 residents. Cahokia outpaced it. This was not a village or a seasonal camp. It was a planned, hierarchical urban center, the anchor of a Mississippian polity spanning the entire American Bottom. The Mississippian culture flourished from approximately 800 CE to 1600 CE across the southeastern United States. Its hallmark was the earthen platform mound, a raised, flat-top structure of compacted earth built to elevate temples, charnel houses, and the residences of rulers. Monk's Mound, Cahokia's centerpiece, stands 30 meters tall and covers more ground at its base than the Great Pyramid of Giza. Built in stages over roughly 3 centuries, it shows no evidence of coerced slave labor. Rather, a workforce organized around the city's political and ceremonial calendar. Cahokia was organized as a centralized chiefdom. At the top sat hereditary rulers the Mississippians called Great Sons, figures who wielded both political and religious authority. Below them, a layered elite class managed tribute, labor, and the redistribution of food across the polity. The burials tell a stark story of inequality. In Mound 72, archaeologists uncovered a high-status individual laid on a platform of 20,000 shell beads, surrounded by additional individuals in sacrificial burial positions. Power at Cahokia was absolute, and it was performed publicly. Adjacent to the central plaza stood Woodhenge, a series of large circles made from red cedar posts, precisely aligned to mark the solstices and equinoxes. A calendar built from timber, confirming that Cahokia's agricultural and ceremonial cycles were synchronized by design. Here's where the evidence gets genuinely surprising. Strontium tests on teeth from Cahokia burials reveal that roughly a third of the population wasn't born there. Strontium from local soil binds into tooth enamel during childhood, a chemical passport that survives 1,000 years. 1 in 3 residents came from somewhere else. Cahokia was drawing migrants, or demanding tribute populations, from across the Mississippian world. This wasn't an isolated community. It was a regional capital, exerting gravitational pull across hundreds of kilometers. Feeding 20,000 people required an agricultural engine. Cahokia ran on corn, maize, cultivated intensively across the American Bottom's rich alluvial soils. Corn was calorie-dense and storable, making it the ideal crop for a city that needed to provision both workers and an elite. But corn monoculture is a fragile system. Plant the same crop in the same soil year after year, and you deplete specific nutrients, amplify pests, and strip the ecological buffer that mixed crop systems provide. Archaeobotanical analysis of Cahokia area sites shows maize dominating the plant assemblage. Cahokia was betting its primary food supply on a single biological hand. Then the climate shifted. The NOAA North American Drought Atlas, compiled from tree ring records across the continent, shows a series of multi-decade droughts beginning in the late 1100s across the central Mississippi Valley. Rainfall became unpredictable. The floodplain that had fed a metropolis began to fail its farmers. Sediment cores from lakes in the American bottom preserve pollen and charcoal layers that record what was growing and what was burning century by century. Those cores show Cahokia's agricultural footprint expanding dramatically, then contracting sharply as the drought years accumulated. Corn monoculture plus multi-decade drought is already a crisis. But Cahokia faced a third pressure simultaneously. The city needed timber, for construction, for fuel, for the cedar posts of Woodhenge. Demand for wood was continuous and large-scale across the entire settlement. Here's where the science forces a revision. For decades, the standard explanation was straightforward. Cahokia's residents cut too many trees, destabilized the soil, triggered erosion and flooding, and destroyed their own environment. It was a compelling narrative. It was also wrong. Recent soil analysis has directly challenged the deforestation collapse theory. The physical evidence, the actual sediment record around Cahokia, doesn't show the dramatic erosion signature you'd expect if catastrophic deforestation had occurred. The landscape held. Which means we have to look harder at the political structure. Chiefdoms built around great sons are inherently brittle. Authority flows from a single lineage. When harvests fail, the paramount chief can't redistribute what doesn't exist, and the legitimacy of the entire hierarchy erodes with the food supply. The archaeological record shows Cahokia constructing and repeatedly rebuilding a massive wooden palisade wall around its central precinct, beginning around 1175 AD. Cities build walls when they feel threatened. The question is whether the threat was external neighbors, internal unrest, or both. The population data is unambiguous. After peaking around 1100 AD, Cahokia's numbers declined steadily through the 1200s. This wasn't a sudden catastrophe. It was a slow hemorrhage. People leaving, neighborhoods emptying, outer settlements contracting toward the core. Where did 20,000 people go? The strontium evidence that showed migrants arriving at Cahokia also implies migrants could leave. The population dispersed, moving outward into smaller Mississippian communities across the river valleys, fragmenting into regional polities that would persist for another 2 centuries. By 1350 AD, Cahokia was effectively empty. Columbus wouldn't reach the Americas for another 142 years. This collapse had nothing to do with European disease, European warfare, or European colonialism. It was entirely indigenous in both its construction and its unraveling. The honest answer to why Cahokia collapsed is convergent. Multi-decade drought stressed a corn-dominant food system with no dietary fallback. That agricultural failure delegitimized a centralized chiefdom already fracturing from within. Each factor amplified the others. Cahokia isn't unique in this pattern. The ancestral Puebloans abandoned Chaco Canyon around 1150 AD under comparable climate stress. And at Tikal, one of the largest classic Maya cities, researchers including David Webster have documented the same convergence in the 9th century. Drought, agricultural failure, elite legitimacy crisis, dispersal. The site today is a UNESCO World Heritage Property, Cahokia Mound State Historic Site in Collinsville, Illinois. Monk's Mound still stands. Woodhenge has been partially reconstructed from its original post holes. The mounds aren't ruins. They're intact. The city around them simply ceased. Active excavation continues to revise the picture. A 2012 study by Timothy Pocketat and colleagues, drawing on new excavations at the Tract 15A site within Cahokia, pushed back the city's founding date by several decades and reframed the speed of its initial growth. Cahokia isn't a closed case. It's an open investigation. Cahokia's decline didn't end the Mississippian world. The culture persisted across the southeastern United States until European contact in the 1500s. Hernando de Soto's 1539 expedition encountered functioning Mississippian chiefdoms, great sons still ruling from platform mounds in what is now Georgia and Alabama. The people who left Cahokia didn't vanish. The Osage, the Quapaw, and the Chickasaw are among the likely ancestors of those Mississippian communities, nations the Mississippi Valley's later settler colonists encountered and displaced. The strontium in those thousand-year-old teeth points toward living lineages, even if the precise connections remain an active area of research. Monk's Mound was built without metal tools, without the wheel, and without draft animals. It moved an estimated 814,000 cubic meters of earth, carried in baskets, by hand, over generations. That's not a footnote to North American history. It's the headline. The deeper question is why Cahokia remains unknown to most Americans. A 2020 review of the 5 most widely adopted U.S. history textbooks found that Cahokia received, on average, less than half a page of coverage, compared to multiple chapters on European colonial settlement. A city larger than medieval London, and it earns a footnote. The parallel that sharpens this lesson is Angkor, the Khmer capital in modern Cambodia. At its 12th century peak, Angkor housed up to 1 million people. Researchers, including Mary Beth Day, have shown that a combination of monsoon failure and overtaxed hydraulic infrastructure, its irrigation canals, triggered a decline strikingly similar to Cahokia's: food shortfall, political fracture, gradual dispersal. The city nobody remembers built the largest earthwork in North America and collapsed before Europe knew this hemisphere existed. The concrete implication? Every urban system, ancient or modern, depends on food security, legitimate governance, and the capacity to adapt when conditions shift. When you hear about any city facing climate stress today, Cahokia is the case study that shows you what the sequence looks like when all 3 fail at once. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more.